You love her voice, you love her looks. What Melissa loves are comic books. Hi, welcome back. So it's been a little while, over a week, but I really wanted to get together with you tonight. Hopefully, I got enough light here. Don't have the sun, but I wanted to talk to you about the funnies. So let's see what I took notes on here. Now, last time I talked to you about Dell and Western were shuffling comic strips around to different titles. That strips from the Funnies and the comics came over to the new title Crackerjack Funnies. What likely happened was that Western took over the expense of licensing the moved comic strips. Whenever this happened in comic books, it left a void in the old anthology title that had to be filled. So, what did Dell fill that space with in the Funnies? Four new titles, four new features debuted in issue number 21: The Crime Busters, Comic Zoo, Oz, and Jack Randall. The Crime Busters was a true crime genre entry, cloning War on Crime, which was licensed to Famous Funnies. The first story is about Jack Flegel, the Wolf of the West, a real life criminal from Branson, Missouri, though I don't think well known outside of Missouri. His story will wrap up in two issues, then is followed by a one-shot story of the Parker kidnapping, a two-parter on little Joe Riley, and then Babyface Nelson, the first truly big mobster, is also wrapped up in just two issues. It's an unsustainable pace, the same problem War on Crime was having, which is why the true crime genre will switch to true crimes eventually. The art is above average. Sometimes looks a little rushed, but I like it. There's a fluidity to it that not a lot of other artists at the time had. The artist was Alden, Al for short, McWilliams. Al had gone straight from studying at the New York School of Fine and Applied Arts, to working in pulp fiction illustration, breaking into comic books for Dell at the age of 21, with this being his very first ongoing feature for Dell, not a comic strip syndicate first. And this is significant. Sheldon Mayer's Scribbly was made straight for the Funnies as well, but he was the assistant editor and could have his own strip in the book if he wanted to. Dell is now recruiting new artists to create content for the comic books without relying on just new licenses. That's something new, but not entirely without licensed properties. One of the new ones is Comic Zoo, a funny animal strip by George Scarbo. George Scarbo was a staff cartoonist with the Newspaper Enterprise Association and had been making some aborted comic strips since 1930, when he was 32. Comic Zoo was his success story, a strip that ran for 30 years in newspapers. Comic Zoo is an ensemble cast without any true characters, just a lot of cute, well drawn animals. But Scarbo's art set the standard for anthropomorphic animal strips to come, no doubt influencing the masters to come, like Barks and Kelly. Most reprints were from recent comic strips, often now less than a year behind the current continuity in the newspapers. It was very rare what Dell did next, which was going back to a strip from 6 years earlier. But that's what they did, with The Wonderland of Oz, a loose adaptation of the second and third Oz books. The Oz strip was done by Walt Spouse, an artist who isn't known for any other comic strips. There are apparently 68 pages of Oz, the comic strip, that existed, and Dell ran all of them until the end of 1940, when Spouse just disappears from strips and comic books altogether. Jack Randall was actually a one-shot story that ran in issue number 21, but this was part of a rotating feature that starred different movie cowboys in adaptations of the recent films. Jack Randall had made 12 movies before 1938, mostly comedies and true crime, crime movies, but had been rebranded in 1937 as a singing cowboy. There were two issues starring Tim McCoy instead, a retired Army brigadier general who became an actor and appeared already in 52 movies, almost all westerns, by 1938. But most of the issues featured Bob Baker, the newest of the three actors. Indeed, all five of his movies up to that point were adapted into the comics. Universal Studios must have had high hopes for Bob Baker, who had actually worked as a cowboy when he was young and could do his own stunts. This is speculation on my part, but I wonder if the studios had approached Dell about the licenses for the cowboy stars instead of vice versa, to serve as cheap advertisement. The art on all of them was by Richard Rogers, a capable artist who was a 38-year-old professional book illustrator. He provided the illustrations for a new edition of Tom Sawyer this same year, but moonlit on the side for Dell for just these stories before quitting comic books. His heart just wasn't in it, apparently, as he became the regular cartoonist for the Christian Science Monitor instead and stayed there for years. The cowboy features did not last longer than Richard Rogers. To fill the gap, Dell acquired Salesman Sam, an easy acquisition since it came from Newspaper Enterprise Association, which I'd already mentioned, and this syndicate was also responsible for Boots and Her Buddies and Freckles and His Friends, which were reprinted elsewhere. It might have been an odd choice, perhaps a cheap choice, since the Salesman Sam strip had ended its run in newspapers 2 years ago already, when its second artist, C.D. Small, died. There was a lot of inventory for the strip, though, since this gag strip had been around since 1921. You wouldn't know that any of these strips were entering the comic book from its covers. Not a one of these new characters were featured on the cover at all year. Now, since covers were usually commissioned well in advance, one could infer from this that the changeover in features happened at a much shorter notice. But this is not the only explanation possible. It was actually unusual at the time for comic book covers to have any kind of announcement about the content inside. Most covers featured Major Hoople prominently, the star character of the Our Boarding House feature. I talked about Major Hoople back in episode 38, and this was a gag strip with no storylines or adventures, so I won't bother covering it more now. The second most common feature advertised on the covers was Scribbly, Sheldon Mayer taking advantage of sometimes being asked to draw the covers to plug his own feature. And that's what we'll talk about for the rest of this episode. Scribbly is a strip that hadn't reached its peak. Someday we'll get to talk about the strips that make it into the Smithsonian Book of Comics. The Smithsonian Book of Comic Book Comics. That's what I meant to say. But for now, the strip is focused on Scribbly's little brother, Dinky. The two boys are in Hollywood, where a movie director thinks Dinky would be the perfect star for his next film, but only if he looks like a girl. Dinky resists adamantly until he realizes that if he's a famous star, he can boss his older brother around. Their mother, Mrs. Gibbet, excited about the $500 a week her son will be making, starts arriving on set to coach Dinky, although it's threats of spanking that get him to cooperate in his girl role. Yes, she's threatening to spank her son if he doesn't dress like a girl. Scribbly feels ignored because of Dinky's success and runs away. This setup is what was meant to be a change in the formula, where Scribbly would be a boy sidekick to a grown-up adventurer in the style of Dickie Dare. The adventurer is named Captain Colorful, and he speaks with a southern drawl reminiscent of Captain Easy. Captain Colorful is traveling with a seemingly insane carnival barker who claims to have pills that can make the imbiber travel back in time. He drugs both himself and Colorful, and Scribbly too accidentally, with the pills. When they all wake up, they see a Civil War battle and think the pills worked, until it turns out to be a movie reenactment. This is all too bad too, because if the strip had become about time travel, it could have tied in with Mayer's very first comic feature, The Strange Adventures of Mr. Weed, a story that I had actually enjoyed reading and wished that he'd done more with. The three of them wind up in jail for trespassing until the director, it's the same director character from earlier, sees Colorful on film and thinks he should be his next big star. Because of a mistake at the jail, the carnival barker is brought back to the director instead. Colorful and Scribbly are released, and Colorful escorts Scribbly back to New York between panels, where Dinky is back home from Hollywood already, too. Now it seems like it was a lot of build up for nothing, though it did get Mayor boosted from 2 pages of Scribbly in issue to 3, so maybe that was the whole point of the adventure angle. Or possibly it was actually meant to parody Captain Easy or Dickie Dare. We do know from a little later on, spoiler alert, that Sheldon Mayer is a master of parody, though the parody is not really on point here and doesn't work as well as what we'll see later on. Anyways, that's all I have to say about Scribbly and about the funnies for now. I've got plenty more from 1938 left to talk to you about, so I'll be back again soon, and I hope that you stay with me. I also hope that you like and subscribe if you haven't already, and that you watch my next episode because I'll be here. I can't wait to see you. Bye for now.